So as I said, we're going to be considering the Beatitudes, those statements that Jesus made about who would be blessed for the next few weeks. I have to admit that in a file called Poor in Spirit, Dan has a very well-written sermon that I did not steal for today. But I did read it. And I read the about 13 articles he's collected about the poor. Not just poor in poverty, but poor crack babies, medical mysteries, victims of AIDS, autism, homelessness, loneliness, hunger, lacking the ability to make a living wage. And you see these every day when you read the news, right? Human trafficking, super predators, fishing. How many of you got the text from me? Yeah, oh my word. Fishing. I will never do that. Violence, climate change migrations, poverty of one kind or another. So the question is, for today, what does it mean to be poor in spirit? Or blessed are the poor in spirit. So first of all, blessed. The word is makario in Greek, which means happy, fortunate, or prosperous. It originally had to do with material wealth and security, but in the religious world, it's connected more with happiness or being favored, and it's most commonly translated blessed. In Hebrew, the equivalent is ashrei, which means the good life. So what is the good life? The setting for this text is Jesus going up into the mountain. The people reading Matthew were mostly the Jews. They would have recognized right away this was a reference to Moses going up into the mountain to receive the law from God, the word from God about what is a good life. Moses' 10 Commandments are mostly thou shalt nots. I think the Beatitudes could be seen as mostly thou shalls. What shall we do to live the good life? There is disagreement, although it's slight, about whether this means the people named are blessed right now. But that can be problematic because who's going to become poor without a vow of poverty? Because you're going to be blessed? No. Because then you become dependent on other people? No. It's not a thing. So there's no glory in being poor. The other option is, will they be blessed when someone helps them in their poverty? Or maybe there's another question here that those of us who are not poor, financially poor, ought to consider. The discussion around the Beatitudes has been going on for a long time since they've been written. And in the kind of midrash style, there are probably more questions and more interpretations than answers. So when something sparks something in you, when the Spirit works, grasp that. It's legitimate. The divine is within you. Barbara Brown Taylor, Episcopal priest, says these two-part affirmations sum up the good life, and then she asks, what gets in the way of that good life? Well, the folks who study Hinduism or perhaps Buddhism would know that the inauthentic self, or the false self, how am I doing, Jerry, gets in the way of the good life. This is the self that chases after the things of the world, the things that don't contribute to the common good, the things that are not love, things that are not of humanity at its best, most flourishing form. So, poor in spirit. Who are the poor that Jesus is talking about? Some say these are the ones who cannot pay you back. When you do something good for them, they have nothing to return. They can't return the favor. Maybe they don't even say thank you for your help. These are the truly poor, according to some. Those who are poor the poor are those in whose condition we see the face of God. This is another possible interpretation. You remember Jesus said, "The poor you will have with you always, and when you do unto them, you do unto me." We see the God who needs. St. Augustine said, "Without God we cannot. Without us, God will not." It's a partnership we have. So it could be that we are being invited to care for the Lazaruses, the ones who cannot reciprocate, the ones on the long list I mentioned a minute ago, and others who come to mind for you. To bless them, because if we don't, we're like the rich man, poor in empathy, who I imagine experienced hell at some level every time he walked by Lazarus, and the stench and the dogs and the crying out and the sores, if only for his guilt. Or do we follow this beatitude? And here's the kind of surprising twist that I read this week. How do we become or know ourselves as poor in spirit? Where do we need help? In our culture, we tend to believe that we're getting by because of our intellect, our skills, our strengths, our education, our wealth, our position, our power. And we often forget that we are quite dependent on the farmers and the truck drivers and the medical personnel and the librarians and the street sweepers and the garbage haulers and many others in order to be who we are, in order to have the life that we have. We are not whole without others if we are not in community. So true happiness or blessedness may mean acknowledging where we're poor, where we have a need, where we lack. And so get connected deeply to someone who can support us in our need. And thus be part of a community and learn all the tricky things that involves. Charles Spurgeon, a conservative theologian, got this right. Above all evils, we have most cause to dread our own fullness. Above all evils, we have most cause to dread our own fullness. When we admit our needs, our lack of clarity, our lack of judgment, our lack of self-control, our lack of wisdom, our lack of patience, our uncontrollable tongue, our pride, our addiction, our lust, our temper, name your poverty. When we realize that we lack something, it leads us more deeply into community. So, in my mind, here's the upshot. We're not whole when we're only giving. We're only whole when we're offering what we can and when we're receiving what we need. Wholeness means understanding that we have something to give and we have a great need that has to be filled. Those who take action to make the world more like that, where we can share our authentic selves, sharing our gifts with those who have need, and sharing our needs and being blessed, these are the ones who will be happy, favored. I think I shared with you already my difficulty with prayer. Started during the pandemic. I was in a precarious work situation. My work tanked. I thought I was doing exactly what God wanted me to do. Then why this? I began to turn to poetry for prayer. When it was appropriate, sharing that poetry with my community and admitting that I was having difficulty praying. I received 3 words from my community throughout the couple years since then. One is that the divine is within, and so look within. Instead of outside yourself trying to communicate with God, if we have the divine within, then just looking within is communicating with the divine. And secondly, the poetry that I shared felt very much like a prayer to the community, appropriately timed words that brought God or love into focus. And third, I also discovered that there were others who found it difficult to pray during that time. And my confession of my need gave them permission to explore that same need for themselves. I think the question for each of us are, what do I have that I can share? Am I sharing fully the gifts that God has given me? And the flip side of that, what do I need? And how do I share that I have that need so that I can truly be my authentic self in this community? And now, because I gave you homework, you're wishing I had stolen Dan's sermon. I want to invite you to spend a moment in quiet and wonder where the Spirit is touching your life today.